feeling when you get to a live poker session, a few hours go by, and you wish you had just done pretty much anything else with your day? This is sometimes because you've been losing in the session, but more often than not, it's because the table is just not exciting and the right atmosphere hasn't been created for a good social dynamic. What are some ways that as a poker community, we can create the experience that players actually want to have when they come to live poker? Here are the top 3 ways that we can make this game that we love even better. Coming in at number 3, we have get off your phone. Phones are actually changing the game, and often for the worse. Now, there are rules in most casinos that during a hand you cannot be on your phone, and with good reason. This is to eliminate cheating and players looking up things on their phones to tell them what to do in hands. This is to eliminate collusion, which is still unfortunately a problem in poker games. But the real issue with players being on their phone, even when they're not in the hands, is that it's creating a table dynamic that is pretty antisocial. People are looking down, they're not talking to one another, and some people, they're even watching movies on their phone, which is actually terrible for your poker game. If you're somebody that's watching a movie, fully engrossed in it, and not paying attention to what's going on at the table, and then you wake up with a really big hand and you press that pause button, anybody looking at you across the table is going to be terrified of whatever you're about to open. So it's very hard to get paid off when you've got the big hands. Players should just not be doing this. This is a really bad habit to have. But anyways, phones are an issue, and players should, in my opinion, be not allowed to have their phones at the table. If you want to make a call or text somebody, you should have to step away. Poker is supposed to be a social environment for a reason. You should be interacting with the other players, engaging with some of the table banter, and making the game fun for everybody else that's there. Phones take us out of that, take us away from one another, and take us out of paying attention to the action around us, which actually makes us worse poker players. So coming in at number 2, we have the orbit rotation changes direction. Why is this so important? In a traditional live poker setting, what happens is the action rotates clockwise all throughout the day. Well, what does this mean? It means that the player sitting to your left is going to have position on you virtually the entire day, except for when it's your button. So what this is like is basically a tennis match where one player is serving against the other player the entire day, and the other player basically never gets to serve. It's an unequal match, and what it leads to is a lot of players making seat changes that are pretty predatory, especially for players that are just sitting down at the table. They see a professional player quickly move to their left, and it already creates this weird dynamic of this player is just trying to one-up me and take advantage of me. If we had a rule that the table were to rotate clockwise one orbit and then counterclockwise the other, we would get rid of a lot of these predatory seat changes, and we would create an environment where the competition is pretty level. It's equal because you get to serve against some players the same way that they get to serve against you throughout the day. It's basically you have an equal amount of position on that player that they will have against you. Now, some people think that this is not doable. They think it's just too confusing, that the dealers in the casinos can't handle it. I assure you that if dealers can handle things like double board bomb pots and running it twice, they can definitely handle something as simple as one orbit goes this way and then the next orbit goes the opposite way, considering that we also have mixed games where they're literally changing the game after each orbit. We can just change the direction with no problem whatsoever. So doing this will create a great environment where everybody gets to have position on one another an equal amount of the time, and we can get rid of these predatory seat changes that really make the game look bad, especially for recreational players. And coming in at number 1, and this is the most important way that we can improve the live poker experience, is to simply have less players at a poker table. So a lot of players have talked about, well, we need to introduce things like straddles to have more action. We have to introduce antes. We have to introduce the 7-deuce game, the stand-up game, all these action things because the game is just moving too slow. Well, the thing is, all of these games fundamentally change the structure of a poker game. They fundamentally change strategies, and sometimes they don't even create the action that we desire, as I mentioned in my last video about straddles. So what we really can do instead is have poker tables that just have less people. Why is this important? If we had 6 people at a game, automatically the ranges that you're able to play if you want to play a fundamentally sound strategy get wider. This allows players to play more hands profitably without having to deviate in a way that's costing them money. And now players are in the action more often. The game is more fun. And we don't need gimmicks like all of these other games to spruce up the action and keep people engaged. Moving to less players on a table would not only be good for the players because they can play more hands, but it'd be good for the casinos too because now they can open more tables and be able to have more games where players are either paying rig or paying time. So 6 players at a table would really be the sweet spot. The funny thing is that often in live poker, there are action players that won't sit at a game until it's like full, until it has 9 players. At Twin River, sometimes until it has 10 players. It's absolutely crazy because these players are insisting the game won't have action when there's more players, when in reality, once they sit down, they have to play much, much tighter because there's so many players left at the table left to act behind them in all spots. So it's actually more players at the table that are killing the action. Having less allows you to be in the action more, to constantly be making different decisions, and to be competing against your opponents in more spots. So I hope you like this video. Ultimately, these 3 things of getting off your phone, of changing the table orbits to get rid of these predatory seat changes, and of having less players at a poker table, I think are the secret sauce to creating a game that we absolutely love. Every single sports league innovates every single year, adding new rules to make the game better, to make the game more fun. I don't see why poker should be any different. So let's have a great debate in the chat about this. And if you like this video, please subscribe for more videos just like this.